Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to go my review of SummerSlam 2009. Starting off the evening, we go to our first match of the night. It is for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. It is Rey Mysterio versus Dolph Ziggler. I thought this was a good opening matchup for SummerSlam 2009. Back and forth matchup between Mysterio and Ziggler, with Ziggler keeping the pace of the match. Mysterio hits a springboard moonsault on Ziggler for a near fall. Mysterio then hits a Hurricane Rana off the apron on Ziggler to the outside. Ziggler then hits an elbow drop on Mysterio. Mysterio then hits a springboard senton on Ziggler. Ziggler then hits a Famouser on Mysterio for a near fall. Mysterio then hits a 619 on Ziggler, and then Rey ultimately hits a Hurricane Rana off the top rope on Ziggler, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match, and at that time, still WWE Intercontinental Champion, is Rey Mysterio. Hats off to Rey Mysterio for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jack Swagger versus MVP. I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between Swagger and MVP, with MVP keeping the pace of the match. But MVP ultimately hits his signature playmaker on Jack Swagger, pins him for the 3. And your winner of the match is MVP. Hats off to MVP for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the Unified Tag Team Championships. It is Chris Jericho and the Big Show versus Crime Time. I thought this was an okay matchup. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Jericho and the Big Show keeping the pace of the match. Shad Gaspard ends up hitting a press slam on Jericho. Jericho then gets up, applies the walls of Jericho on JTG, but JTG breaks the hold. Big Show then hits a WMD on JTG, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are Chris Jericho and the Big Show. Hats off to Chris Jericho and the Big Show for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night as well. It is Kane versus the Great Khali. I thought this was an okay match. Back and forth matchup between Kane and Khali, with Kane keeping the pace of the match. Khali hits a devastating elbow drop on Kane in the middle of the ring, but Kane ultimately hits a DDT on the Great Khali, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Kane. Hats off to Kane for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Triple H and Shawn Michaels versus Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes. Number one, I thought this was a really good matchup. The other thing I would say as well is DX coming out to the ring had way too much pyro coming down to the ring in this matchup, man. He probably spent pretty much $1 million in pyro alone just to have Shawn Michaels and Triple H come down to the ring, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. It was way too much pyro. Back and forth match between both teams, though. DX was keeping the pace of the match. Triple H hits a knee drop on Ted DiBiase Jr. Shawn then hits a Luthez press. Triple H then hits a spine buster on Cody. Triple H and DiBiase both exchange in the middle of the ring. Shawn then applies a figure 4 leg lock on DiBiase, but DiBiase breaks the hold. Cody then hits a crossroads on Shawn for a near fall. Triple H then hits a pedigree on Cody, and then Shawn ultimately hits a sweet chin music on Cody as well. Pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are D-Generation X. Hats off to D-Generation X for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is for the WWE Championship. It is Randy Orton versus John Cena. Number one, I thought this was a great match. Back and forth matchup between Orton and Cena, with Orton keeping the pace of the match. Orton hits a knee drop on Cena in the middle of the ring, but Cena gets up, hits a 5-knuckle shuffle on Orton in the middle of the ring. Orton then gets up, hits his vintage DDT on Cena for a near fall. Cena gets up, hits a leg drop off the top rope on Orton for a near fall. Orton and John both exchange in the middle of the ring. Orton ends up hitting the referee, and your winner of the match by disqualification was John Cena. After that, though, Lillian Garcia gets on the mic and says that Vince McMahon had reversed the call and that the match must resume. Orton then goes to leave. Referee counts to 10, and your winner of the match, again by countout this time, is John Cena. But the match again resumes. Orton hits a roll-up on Cena, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Randy Orton. A new referee comes down to the ring, says reffing Referee says that Orton ended up cheating by using the ropes. John then quickly applies a STFU on Orton. A fan somehow gets into the ring, tries to attack Orton, but Orton ultimately hits an RKO on Cena, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match and still champion is Randy Orton. Hats off to Randy Orton for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is the main event of SummerSlam 2009. It is Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship in a TLC match. I thought this was a relatively good matchup. Back and forth matchup between Hardy and Punk, with Punk keeping the pace of the match. Punk hits Hardy with a chair shot. Punk then hits a superplex on Jeff Hardy onto a ladder. It looked absolutely brutal. Hardy, though, somehow gets up, hits a twist of fate on Punk. Hardy then climbs the ladder, but Punk hits a springboard axe handle on Hardy. Hardy then hits Punk with a chair shot. Hardy hits a swanton off the ladder on CM Punk through the announce table on the outside. Punk and Hardy both exchange on top of the ladder, but Punk ultimately grabs the title. And your winner of the match, and at that time new World Heavyweight Champion, is CM Punk. After the match, though, the lights go out, and then next thing you know, we hear Undertaker's music hits. And it looks like Undertaker's going to challenge CM Punk next for the World Heavyweight Championship. Couple things I'm going to say about this SummerSlam, man. Number one, SummerSlam 2009 was a solid event from top to bottom. Starting with the opening matchup between Rey Mysterio and Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Fantastic match from top to bottom, man. Jack Swagger versus MVP. Definitely can tell it was a mid-card matchup. I definitely could have done without it. Chris Jericho and Big Show versus Crime Time. It was a solid matchup. Rest in peace to Shad Gaspard, man. But it was a decent match. It was for the Unified Tag Team Championships. And Crime Time really did try to give it their all, man. But Chris Jericho and Big Show ultimately get the win over Crime Time in that matchup. Kane versus the Great Khali is definitely one of those matches I definitely could have done without. The finish was horrific. I mean, Kane literally just got the win by a DDT. And it was more or less Khali kind of just falling headfirst into the mat, kind of giving Kane the DDT. And it didn't even look like Kane even gave it even a thought or even tried to land that DDT. So it was horrific. It was god-awful. DX versus Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes. I thought it was a great match. This was a time that Ted DiBiase Jr. and Cody Rhodes were a part of Legacy, the stable that Randy Orton was a part of, that created. I thought Legacy was great. I really did. I love the team. I love the name of the team and what they were trying to do with the team. I mean, you had second-generation superstars with Randy Orton, a third-generation superstar with Randy Orton. Then you got, Cody Rhodes, obviously being the son of Dusty Rhodes and the brother of Goldust. You got Ted DiBiase Jr., the son of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Legacy was awesome. Legacy was absolutely awesome. But I will say this, like I stated earlier, man, Generation X, when they came out to the ring, there was so much pyro. It was unreal, man. They probably spent almost $1 million almost, I would assume, just within pyro for them just to come out to the ring, man. It was absolutely insane. Randy Orton versus John Cena. I thought it was a good match, man, but the one thing I hated there's too much confusion going on in this match. I mean, at one time, you had 3 different decisive winners, in my honest opinion, win this matchup. I mean, you had the first fall, well, technically the first fall was John Cena winning by disqualification because Orton ended up hitting the ref. That got reversed. And then Cena won by countout because Orton didn't make a 10 count because he was outside the ring. That changed. And then Orton hit a roll-up, but he used the ropes. That got changed. It was just too much confusion in that match, which is really a shame, man, because I feel like that having that happen kind of definitely took away from the match itself, man, because in the beginning, it was a fantastic match. It really was, and the fans were completely behind it. And then these different finishes, and then we also have a fan jumping the barricade, trying to enter the ring, attacking Orton, or Orton attacks the fan. It was just all over the place, man, even to a point where John Cena even looked at the referee and was like, why the hell are we even out here? It was awful, man. It was really bad. In the beginning, the match was great, but towards the end, the final product was absolutely horrendous. And then the main event, Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship in a TLC match, man. From top to bottom, this match was absolutely phenomenal. And what more can you get out of Jeff Hardy in a ladder match, man? I mean, the guy, I feel like Jeff Hardy, number one, he didn't create the ladder match, but he definitely created the TLC match, in my honest opinion. Those TLC matches that he had with his brother and the Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian. Absolutely phenomenal. And CM Punk, I mean, the way they were hyping up CM Punk at that time, I mean, obviously ECW, they had their rebirth at the time. He was supposed to be the flagship person for ECW and their whole rebirth stuff, man. And having CM Punk in this TLC match and ECW having that reboot or rebirth, if you will, and they came back into existence. I mean, CM Punk was supposed to be the top guy for ECW. And this match just goes to show you, man, because both Hardy and Punk just went at it throughout the entire match, man. Each guy gave it their all in this matchup. They really did. And Punk ended up getting the victory, grabbing the title, and becoming the new World Heavyweight Champion at that time at SummerSlam 2009. And the also cool fact was that after he had grabbed the title, the lights went out. You hear the, infamous Undertaker gong, if you will, the music, and the fans go crazy. And like I stated earlier, it looks like Taker was going to challenge CM Punk next for the World Heavyweight Championship, And again, man, every time Undertaker makes an appearance or, his entrance music, man, you hear that gong, you know what I mean? That dong, and then like the lights go out, the lights flicker. I mean, it's just that whole entrance with Undertaker is synonymous to professional wrestling, man. Synonymous. But it was cool to have his music play. It was cool to see Punk win the World Heavyweight Championship as well. So, like I stated earlier, looks like Undertaker was going to challenge Punk next for the World Heavyweight Championship. As far as giving SummerSlam 2009 a rating from 1 out of 10, man, I'm going to give SummerSlam 2009 a solid 7, man, at best. This was a solid SummerSlam. I'm not going to sit here and say it was the best SummerSlam, but it was no way in shape and form the worst SummerSlam I've ever seen, man. This SummerSlam from top to bottom was really good. I really did enjoy it. And all the matches on here, except for maybe like 1 or 2, were really, really good, man. But yeah, I'm going to have to give SummerSlam 2009 a solid 7 at best. But this is my review of SummerSlam 2009. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.